Greetings, my greasy gang. Sugar Pants here, and you caught me rocking out to some of my old records. And since I don't do anything on this show that isn't a lazy setup for something, that must mean today's movie has to do with rock. Today's putrid picture show is 1988's Black Roses, a demonic little ditty where the forces of evil pose as a rock band to taint America's youth. And it's a great little time capsule reminder of what it was like living in the middle of the great Satanic Panic of the 80s, where anything that wasn't football or voting Republican was considered a gift from the Dark Lord himself. So break out the white rain and tease that hair as high as it will go as I read off this movie's set list, aka the Sleaze Docket. We have 7 dead bodies, 2 cups blood, 8 naked breasts, awful synth score, gratuitous Ralph Waldo Emerson, 1 demonic speaker monster, 1 bitten face, 1 skeletonized audience, 1 car smushing, strip gin heart attack, 5 gunshots to the head, 1 window shoving, ashtray to the skull, knife to the throat, wooden stake to the chest, 1 kick to the demon's balls, corset fondling, neon pink demonic transformation, 1 Mo Howard pin, and 1 big pussy. Our movie about a demonic rock band starts exactly how you'd expect, with smooth synth jazz over stock footage of the city. Suddenly we cut to one of the ugliest frontmen I've seen since Ronnie James Dio, playing music that seems incredibly tame for a performance from the forces of darkness. These guys sure don't make me fearful for my soul. If anything, it just reminds me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of Our Shells concert event. Outside in the lobby, the man shows up with a court order to shut down this. But when he opens the doors, he's overrun by zombie, mutant, demon things armed with fog machines? Skip ahead in time to Anytown, USA, where a couple of sweet-ass sports cars are rolling down Main Street. Out steps the leather and leopard skin codpiece-clad Damien, leader of the Black Roses and mullet enthusiast. We then get a montage of the town's teens and their morning routines before school. First up, the Janie's household, where the kids are getting hassled for their record albums by the school marm mom. Then the slacker sleepy Tony.
Get up! You're going to be late for school, you lazy bum!
Yeah, you betcha, you hoser! Then there's Johnny, who seems to be doing all right without any parental involvement whatsoever. And then finally Julie, whose stepdad is getting creepily close while mom is at work. During all of this, the Black Roses poster the town to make sure everyone knows of their upcoming performance. Finally, it's time for class, and the porno mustache teacher is giving a lesson on Walt Whitman and evil. Matthew rounds up the class for a discussion, and immediately the conversation turns towards the Black Roses and how the town is trying to stop the concert. Matthew suggests that the parents aren't necessarily trying to stop the concert to annoy the kids, but rather it's something that's new, and they don't know how to handle it. The students continue making a big deal about the Black Roses choosing their small town for the kickoff to their tour until the bell rings and everyone leaves. But Johnny sticks around to ogle Julie for a bit. That night, Johnny's dad suddenly looks away from his paper long enough to ask him about the concert, since that's all anyone in town is talking about. But ultimately, he casts it aside and goes back to not giving a shit while Johnny decorates his denim jacket with some sweet, sweet fan art. But most of the town's parents are gathered at the town hall meeting to piss and moan about the evil concert coming to town. Which is kind of funny, since the frightened white housewives are correct in claiming the demonic forces are actually demonic. The head Karen talks about how they don't have to carry guns like other towns. Tipper Gore goes on and on about how awful the band is and finishes off by reading some lyrics.
Tear down the walls of hell. Make room for lust to dwell. Carry in your hands a sword. Tear away the image of the Lord.
Cute. But I have another one that came out about this same time. You gotta swing your hips now. Come on, baby. Jump up. Jump back. Oh, well, I think you got the knack. Move around the floor in a locomotion. Do it holding hands, if you got the notion. Do it nice and easy now. Don't lose control. A little bit of rhythm and a lot of soul. The crowd is reaching a fever pitch until the level-headed Mayor Farnsworth steps up to remind people that their parents threw fits over Elvis and the Beatles and insists that the Black Roses are no worse, and that rock has always been about rebellion. However, the moral majority aren't convinced, even though he's making very well thought-out points, and still insists the concert be shut down. Meanwhile, Julie and Johnny are out in matching denim jackets complaining about their middle-age issues. Oh, wait. I mean teen angst. He then accuses her of being romantically involved with their teacher, Matthew. She angrily denies that she is, and reminds him that Matthew is seeing the mayor's daughter, Priscilla. Johnny uses that as a springboard to ask her out. Why not? I can't imagine any girl wouldn't be thrilled to be asked out by the jerk who just accused them of sleeping with a man 30 years older than her. No college, no prospects, living in a dead-end town. The only thing that perks Johnny up is Black Roses, but even that might get taken away. Finally, he gets the idea to paint the town red, and like a dipshit teen with zero life experiences, he means to do so literally. But before we can get any lame vandalism, the two run away when they hear Matthew approach. He checks the paint can, but is distracted by the shadowy figure who brought a fog machine with him to the alley. When he leaves, the paint can bursts into flame. Ooh, spooky. Next day at school, Matthew singles out Johnny for the lesson, and while he's answering, he presents him with the pocket knife that was left with the paint can last night. After class, Johnny tells Matthew that his mother left his father because he wouldn't take a chance on anything. Which kind of sounds like one of those bullshit lies you tell your kids so they don't have to hear the reality is that mommy likes her men hung like horses and dad's just an Oscar Mayer cocktail frank. And it's the night of the concert. All the kids are politely sitting in the theater seats up front while the adults of the community are all in the back. Matthew sits next to Mayor Farnsworth and the band takes the stage looking like they're about to do an ad for the Dairy Council. Damien starts with a soft power ballad you normally only hear when the main character goes for an introspective drive after his lady leaves him. Farnsworth admits it isn't what he expected and says he's seen enough. He asks if the rest are satisfied and they all take off. Once the old farts are gone, the band strips off the veneer and start looking more like the cast of The Blade Master. Next day at school, the kids are already acting differently. None of the kids are so quick to respond to the teacher's questions, and when they do, the answers are wrong. Matthew tells them all to get some sleep and dismisses them. Julie's the last to leave the class, so Matthew asks, how was the concert? She says it was so good, she's going again tonight since the band gave them free tickets. Matthew meets with the principal about the odd change of his students. The principal is convinced the band has stirred up some rebellion, but it'll calm down once they've left town. Meanwhile, the band is out in the parking lot passing out records, which turns into a small fight. At the theater, Matthew meets with Damien to get some info and finds the cleanest cut fucker I've ever seen. Damien's long hair is gone, he's wearing a button-up shirt and drinking a glass of fucking milk for Christ's sake. Seriously, even when I was a teenager, I never trusted an adult with a glass of milk. I still fucking don't. Damien says they chose a small town to work out the kinks of their show before they move on to bigger gigs. Before he leaves, Damien invites Matthew to come to tonight's show, but he turns down the offer. Damien asks if he has another date with the mayor's daughter, and Matthew is floored at how he even knew that. As he leaves, he runs into Julie and asks her why she's not in class, but she asks him the same thing. Touché, madame. And it can't be an 80s rock movie without pumping some iron. Tony's curling his weights while his dad walks in to tell him to help his mom with the dishes. That's when he notices Tony's earring and uses it to call him a homosexual. Only in not such nice terms. He turns off the Black Roses record and sits down to catch up on his periodicals. Suddenly, the record player powers up and starts playing on its own. He takes a closer look and notices the record is veiny, pulsing, and covered in goo. He looks up at the throbbing speaker just in time to be attacked by a chompy spider demon. He throws it away, but it scrambles back towards him and chomps down on his face. Its industrial tail starts reeling it back into the speaker, and Dad is slowly devoured.
Death by stereo.
Matthew's getting home and kicking back with a beer and some Mozart on cassette, but the kids are all at the show, which is getting darker each performance, and this one starts with a nice pentagram candle arrangement. Suddenly the crowd is transformed into latex skeleton puppets who kind of look like your great Aunt Sheila after just seeing a rat run across the buffet table. Back at Matthew's, he's woken up by the sound of breaking glass and finds someone has smashed his passenger side window. He takes off to find the vandal and notices Main Street looking a lot rougher than it used to. He stops off at the mayor's house to talk to Farnsworth, but Priscilla answers the door instead. Suddenly, a fight from absolutely nowhere pops up, with Priscilla asking if Matthew has a date with her father, and Matthew snidely pointing out that she has never been concerned with his students. She singles out Julie and then complains that when she first dated Matthew, she expected him to be doing something with his life, and he angrily defends his life choices by saying he's at least tried. Johnny's getting home from the show, all fired up and rockin', but Dad almost doesn't even acknowledge him coming in.
Is that you, Johnny?
He goes to bed and turns on some more Black Roses. Jesus Christ, do you literally have no other cassettes or records? Suddenly a claw-shaped shadow appears and Johnny sits up just in time to notice a naked woman in his bedroom. She climbs on top and we leave before anything good happens. We cut to the Miller household where a young boy is playing with his action figures. Superman, Batman, and Aquaman all get chucked into the fire. When Dad asks how he could do that to his toys, the boy says he did it to the bad guys. Uh-oh. Looks like the Black Roses are affecting more than just those in attendance at the show. He sends the little boy off to bed just as Janie comes home with a friend, Tina. Apparently Tina is locked out of her house and Janie asks if she can stay for a while. Dad says it's a school night, but eventually is convinced to go along with it. He suggests a game of gin to pass the time. Tony's out smashing into trash cans and finally comes home just as Mom's taking the trash out herself. She asks where he's been and chastises him about going to the show again when she told him not to. Tony throws the car in reverse, plows into Mom, then parks the car and goes inside. Back at the Millers, Dad is sneaking some peeks at Tina's legs and wins the current hand. Janie says that's it for her and heads off to bed, but Tina says she's not tapped out yet. He says they should call to see if her parents are home, but Tina assures Dad that they won't be home for hours. She then suggests raising the stakes for the next hand and play strip gin. Johnny's naked guest is still hanging out, at least until he gets up to leave, and she disappears. He goes out to the living room where the family gun is stored and heads towards his dad, who's still reading the newspaper, and plugs him with 5 shots to the dome. Tina and Mr. Miller are a few hands into their game. Oof, dang. Eventually, Mr. Miller wins another hand and Tina loses the bra and climbs on top. She buries her face into Mr. Miller's neck and he either passes out or dies. I'm assuming he dies. Lucky bastard. And we're back to class with Matthew, where things are just getting worse and worse. Now the kids are openly hostile and refuse to talk about anyone but Damien and Black Roses, and Matthew can't regain control of the class. Skip ahead a bit, and Matthew calls Mayor Farnsworth to tell him something serious is going on in town. Farnsworth says he's sounding like a hysterical Mrs. Miller, and that's when Matthew confirms that Mr. Miller is in fact dead. He also says he doesn't believe Tony Ames's mother hit-and-run accident was an accident at all. He then says there's something about the band's music that's affecting the kids. Farnsworth then says he's just taking the concerned teacher angle a little too seriously. And that's when Matthew sees an advertisement for his local library. Janie Miller is visiting the principal about her father's recent passing. He asks how she feels, and she says she feels like opening the window and screaming at the top of her lungs. The principal thinks that's a good idea and opens the window for her. That's when Janie turns into a lanternfish, shoves him out, and watches him fall to his death right into a conveniently placed truck. Meanwhile, at the library... Excuse me. Matthew is getting some inspiration for his next D&D session when we get a student jump scare from Julie, and her hair is fabulous! She says she's going to the concert again tonight, and Matthew asks how she can listen to the same music night after night after night. She then asks how many times he's read Leaves of Grass, and he can't really argue with her. He reminds her that she's worked really hard this year and she's been neglecting her studies lately, and that he doesn't want her to throw away her chances at a scholarship. She eventually storms off with Johnny. Johnny Storm. And it's time for another leather show. Damien brings out the deep voice and commands his minions before popping in the milky contact lenses and laughing maniacally. Cut to Julie in a lacy corset, popping out of her clothes for a quick fondle, and it's time to get creepy with stepdad. And I gotta say, I love how the more evil she gets, the more fabulous her hair gets. She starts rubbing his shoulders before bashing his skull in with the world's largest ashtray. Matthew wakes up at the library desk the next morning and makes a mad dash to Julie's house. Her mom answers and says she was waiting for the police to respond to her dead husband and mentions that Julie isn't home. Matthew says he'll find her and takes off. At the nearby tennis courts, Priscilla is getting into her car and notices Julie in the back seat. She calls her one of Matthew's little pets, and Julie slashes her throat. Just then, Matthew arrives at the mayor's house, but no one's answering. So he speeds off towards his house and gets there just in time for the phone to ring. It's the mayor calling to say that Priscilla's had an accident. Her car caught on fire, somehow, and Matthew drops the phone. Suddenly the doorbell rings and it's...
Sandy!
Wait, no, it's Julie. And she says she's brought Matthew a present. Herself. She throws herself at him, but he rejects her, and she gets more and more aggressive. Eventually, she just starts taking her clothes off and admits to killing Priscilla, so now nothing can keep them apart. She starts to go downtown, and Matthew slaps her away. When she stands up, she's got a mouthful of British teeth and starts glowing purple. Slowly, she transforms into a KY jelly-covered puppet. The power of McEnroe compels you! The power of McEnroe compels you! The power of McEnroe compels you! The fight makes its way to the kitchen, where Matthew falls and breaks a stool, then uses the broken wooden leg to stake Julie through the heart. Immediately, Matthew runs to Texaco for a can of gas and flares, and we cut to the nightly concert. Matthew heads inside with his duffel bag o' death, but everyone's too busy worshipping Damien to notice him pouring gasoline everywhere until...
Get that man!
The crowd drags him to the stage as Damien monologues for a bit until it's time to show off his true form. Off comes the wig, he turns into something out of Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and everyone starts looking like zombies. Finally, Damien becomes a giant ghoulie, and Matthew starts wailing on him with a gong mallet. The two have a nice knockdown barroom brawl for a while until Matthew gets a hold of one of his flares. Suddenly, Julie is there. So I guess that means killing her in demon form didn't kill the real her? He throws Julie to safety and lights up the stage!
Boy, this party really died.
Suddenly the band starts playing, the fire department shows up, and all hell breaks loose. Johnny is being carried away by the police, screaming about his dad like he has no idea what happened. I'm guessing that means the spell has been broken? Damien rocks out for a bit more until it fades to black. Skip ahead a bit and the Black Roses are once again in the news. It's been 6 months, but now they're in New York, selling out Madison Square Garden for a solid week and are planning a British tour afterwards. So does that mean that where the movie started is where the movie ended? Maybe. And that's Black Roses, a fun little slice of cheese that I think is fascinating when you realize in this story the religious and moral majority who railed against 80s rock are the heroes, when in reality they were just the jackasses trying to ruin anything fun. Yet for all their bluster, for all their pomp and phony outrage for the cameras, for all the labels they legally got plastered onto albums, rock still exists, as does rap, R&B, movies, video games, Dungeons and Dragons, books, and just about every single thing that they all wasted tax dollars and government time bitching and moaning about. But that still hasn't stopped them from continuing to blame all of society's problems on the same things that time after time are proven in studies to have no impact whatsoever. Deflect, dismiss, and distract. Meanwhile, book burnings and bannings have made a comeback. And I don't want to get too political on the show, but can I just say how fucking stupid you gotta be to burn books in the digital age? But I guess you gotta be pretty fucking stupid to see all the book burning in history and think that yours is the first one on the correct side of history. Black Roses was directed by John Fasano, and he's no stranger to rock-related movies. He also directed Rock and Roll Nightmare and Zombie Nightmare, though he's uncredited for that one. John Martin played our kick-ass teacher Matthew, but he also did a little 80s TV. You might have seen him in 7 episodes of One Life to Live, 159 episodes of Sunset Beach, 36 episodes of The Young and the Restless, and 7 episodes of both Days of Our Lives and Mistresses. Frank Dietz played our troubled teen Johnny, but he also starred in Rock and Roll Nightmare and Zombie Nightmare. But he's also got some writing credits to his name, including 1 episode of the new Creepshow series. Priscilla was played by Carla Ferrigno, and I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing too. Is she married to Lou Ferrigno? Well, the answer is yes, she fucking is. Plus, they've got 3 kids, which means she definitely survived multiple times when... And of course, Tony's dad was Big Pussy himself, Vincent Pastore. You have almost definitely seen him if you've watched anything that had a big fat Italian guy since the 80s. Goodfellas, Carlito's Way, The Ref, The Basketball Diaries, Joe's Apartment, Gotti, Mafia, Mickey Blue Eyes, Corky Romano, Riding in Cars with Boys, Shark Tale, Meet the Mobsters, The Sopranos. He's got 183 acting credits to his name, and he's still adding to that list. So with that, we file away another moldy movie from the mausoleum, but at least this one was a pleasure to get through. Some of those basement tapes are just tragic and painful, but someone's got to review them. I mean, I could just pick the best of the best movies that already have rabid fan bases and just do a show for clicks, but that's just not the show I want to do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got another rancid review to prepare for. So until I greet you again for the next sucky cinematic selection, this is your old pal Sugar Pants. See you in your dreams.
Do you know what scares me? People who don't use their local library.